friends, and welcome back to the Mama Doc Baby Doc podcast. I'm so glad you've joined us today for another episode. I'm Rachel, a pediatrician, and this is Renda. She is an OBGYN and my mother.
Hi, Rachel. Hello.
Hi.
Well, I'm excited today because Friday, which is tomorrow, we're recording this on a Thursday, but on Friday, I am leaving to go to Hawaii and visit your youngest brother. So that's kind of
Yeah,
fun. We have a week
I'm
in the
so jealous.
sunshine. Yeah,
I'm
you
so
should be.
jealous. Yeah,
You should
it's
be.
snowing here. We got dumped on
Uh,
like 5 inches of snow today,
mm.
which I'm very sad about. So enjoy Hawaii for me. Soak
Yeah,
up some
I'm going to.
sun.
I'm gonna enjoy the beach. Living in Alaska, we have to get sunshine when we can. Well, today, in our episode today, I know we're talking a lot about sleep training. And you know, Gosh, there's so much controversy about this, right? I mean, I've seen posts online about sleep training. Some people do it and they love it, and other people don't think that you should sleep train at all. There are very strong feelings about it. And I know when my children were young, I mean, that was a long time ago. And I think things have evolved a lot since then. And for me personally, when my children were learning to sleep, it all depended on the stage of life that I was in, how I went about like sleep training. So why don't you start by telling us what exactly is sleep training? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So sleep training is just that, training your child to sleep independently, teaching them to self soothe, teaching them to sleep in their own bed or their own room, teaching them to fall asleep without needing to be rocked to sleep. That's
Right.
basically what it
Right.
is when we say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I personally loved rocking my babies to sleep. But
Yeah.
if you're going to sleep train your child, what is a good age that parents should consider starting that?
Yeah, really, the recommendation is between 4 to 6 months. That's a good time to start sleep training. Some babies can be ready as early as 3 months. Others are really not ready at all until 6 months. Every baby's a little different and develops in their own timing. I did sleep training with JJ at 6 months. And I chose 6 months because I wanted to sleep train him in his own room, in his crib. Until 6 months, he slept in a bassinet in my room next to my bed. The American Academy of Pediatrics does recommend that infants sleep in their parents' room, in their own bed, but until a year.
Oh,
But I decided at 6 months I wanted to move JJ over. The risk of SIDS decreases significantly at 6 months. So I felt like it was a safe time to transition him. He also outgrew his bassinet at 6 months.
yeah,
He
he's
was
really
like
big.
done.
He's huge.
So I really felt ready to move him.
Yeah.
That being said, every family is different, and some babies are ready to move into their own room earlier than 6 months, and other babies are not ready at 6 months. So sometimes it really is trial and error to see what is best for you and your family, honestly.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I have heard some people that absolutely love sleep training and others have very strong feelings against it. So, what
Yeah.
is all that about? Why is it so
Yeah.
controversial?
Yeah, it really can be controversial. And I think that comes from how it can be emotionally stressful for the parents. And some parents don't really understand how sleep training works, and they think it's all just like the cry it out method.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people think the cry it out method is too harsh and it's emotionally stressful for baby and parent, and they don't like that method. And that's understandable. It's not easy. But
Yeah.
not all sleep training is the same as the cry it out method. We can
Right.
talk a little bit about that.
Right. So, do you recommend sleep training for your patients?
Yeah, I really do. I do. Yep.
All right. So, as a pediatrician and as a mom who has now successfully sleep trained her son, tell us
Yeah.
why. Why do you recommend
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. So it truly is important to teach your children to be independent in multiple areas of life, not just sleep. Sleep is just one of them. Sleep training is about teaching children to be able to self soothe and to fall asleep independently, which is an important life skill. Of course, you teach them that you are always there, you will always be there for them if they need you. But at the same time, they need to learn to do things on their own. And teaching them independence allows them to grow up to be confident adults, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I can see how that applies to lots of different areas of life, like you said. When they're older and you're at the playground, you're gonna teach them to climb the stairs and go down the slide independently. So, of
Yeah.
course, you're gonna be right there to catch them. But once kids figure out that they can do things on their own, they're really happier and they have more confidence, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about independence with sleep, we talk about the ability to self soothe. If I lay my baby down awake, can he or she fall asleep on their own? Or am I having to rock them completely asleep every night and then do the slow transfer and pray they didn't wake up dance that you do when you
Yeah,
transfer
yeah.
them to
Oh,
the
oh, I
crib?
know all about that. You do everything you can. Don't make any sudden movements.
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of babies who don't learn to self-soothe at a young age end up sleeping in their parents' bed for years. And I have personal experience with this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
My youngest son, my baby, okay, Edson, I, babied him. I did, and he slept in
Mhm.
the bed with us, which is not appropriate, I understand, for a really long time, and then when we tried to move him to his own bed, we actually ended up getting a dog bed and putting it on the floor right next to our bed. It was very soft. It's very, very soft. And he slept in a dog bed for quite a while before we got him to a regular crib bed.
I
Actually, by
remember
then, I think
that.
it was not even a crib, it was a regular twin bed. He was so
Yeah.
old. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
But, I
Yeah.
actually see this a lot with my patients.
Yeah.
Probably 50% or more of my patients end up sleeping in their parents' bed for honestly years. Some until middle school,
Okay, that's a
honestly.
little much.
Yeah. But we'll
Uh,
talk a little bit later about that. And if you're in that position, kind of what you can do to sleep train older kids too. But let's talk about babies first.
okay. All right. So there's a lot to talk about if can babies be manipulative or not? So if
Yeah.
you look at posts online, people get into heated arguments about whether or not a baby can be manipulative. What do we know about if
Yeah.
babies can be manipulative or not? What do we know about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I don't think there have been any medical studies done on what age a baby can start manipulative behaviors. Um, Obviously, training is not recommended before the age of 4 months, since babies are not developmentally ready to understand fully how to self
Right.
soothe. Um, there are things you can do early on to try to prepare them for sleep training, but it's not really recommended until 4 months of age. But if we're talking about manipulation, there's really no medical answer for that. I definitely do not think a newborn, like birth to 2 months, can be manipulative. However, if you have a baby, there are probably times when you think they just might be manipulating you.
Right,
I know
right.
I've
I
got
know.
this with JJ, and more as he's getting older. John and I laugh about it because he will scream and cry until I pick him up, and then he immediately smiles.
Right,
Now,
right.
is he really just happy to be close to me? Of course.
Yes,
And
yeah.
can he tell me that he wants just to be held? No, he can't say that. So is he just doing what he can to get what he wants? Yeah, sure, but I don't know if that's the definition of manipulation. Maybe it is. I don't know. But that's what he does.
Right,
Yeah,
okay. All right, so let's talk about the different types of sleep training and go through
okay.
each one. So tell us, what are the different types of sleep training?
There are a few different methods. Really, we're going to chat about three today. One is the cry it out method. We've talked a little bit about that, but we'll talk about it more. Another is called the Ferber method. And then There are a few others that are considered modified Ferber methods, which one of them is called taking care of babies. And we'll talk, it's one of the more popular ones. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so let's talk about the cry it out method. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the classical cry it out method is one that has really been used a long time.
Yeah.
This method involves putting your child in their crib at bedtime and not going into their room again until morning, despite how much they cry, how much they protest. You're just putting them in there and then going back to get them in the morning.
So this can be so hard for the parents, right? I mean,
Yeah.
listening to your child cry for hours on end is
Yeah.
not fun and can make you as the parent, I think, feel very, very emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I think parents who use this method get a lot of hate. But I know it's not easy for them either, right? Like
No, no.
ultimately their goal is to teach their child to sleep independently, and it's to teach them self-soothing techniques just like the rest of us. So if you know someone who chooses this method, try not to be hard on them, because sleep training is hard enough without everyone hating on you so much. We're
Right.
all just trying to do what's best.
Right, and there's too much hate out there anyway, so I agree with
I
that
agree.
completely. That's very
Yeah, for
true.
sure.
So, you said the Ferber method. Tell me what the Ferber
Yes.
method is.
The Ferber method is probably one of the more popular ones. It's another method that's a little easier on parents emotionally when it comes to sleep training. It was first described by a physician named Dr. Richard Ferber, which is why it's called the Ferber method. And he first wrote about it in 1985, so not that long ago. If I do say so myself, being born in 1987 was like just 21
Yeah,
years ago, something like that.
right, something like
um,
that, yeah, yeah.
But he wrote a book about it, and it has been really a classic for years. The book is called Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems. Then, in 2006, he revised it and expanded on it. But he currently is an associate professor of neurology at Harvard Medical
Mm,
School and is the director of the Center for Pediatric Sleep Disorders at
okay.
Children's Hospital in Boston. So he has a lot of experience in medical practice. And really, honestly, most sleep training methods today are based on this method. And we'll talk about later, but some even call themselves modified Ferber methods. The Ferber method is a type of gradual extinction of behavior training. So basically, you're gradually eliminating your child's association between sleep and your actions, like rocking, patting, singing, or really even just your presence. You're teaching
Hmm,
them to fall asleep independently by slowly eliminating associations. Um, how it works is you're going to put your baby down to sleep in their crib at bedtime. You will put them to sleep awake, and you'll tell them you love them and good night, and then you'll walk out. And after that, you're going to go back into the room at scheduled check in intervals. If they're crying, you'll reassure them. You'll tell them you love them, that you're still there, even if they can't see you. And then you will walk out and wait until the next scheduled check in time. It really is recommended to keep those check ins to only 2 minutes long maximum.
so you
And
only stay in the room for 2 minutes, right? It's
right,
not 2 okay, got it,
exactly.
okay.
You're going to stay
I'm
in the room
learning,
for
you're
2
teaching
minutes.
me.
Stay in the
Great,
room
okay,
for 2 minutes max, telling them that you love them, that they're
oh,
okay, you're still there, and then
got
walking
it,
back out again.
got it.
There is a full breakdown of the recommended schedule, and I will put it up online. But to break it down, you're going to plan to do 7 days of sleep training. You're going to plan that many days. It doesn't always take that long, but the first day, you're going to do the first check in after 3 minutes. So after you say goodnight and walk out, you're going to wait 3 minutes, and then you're going to do that first check in. The second check in is after 5 minutes, and all the remaining check ins are after 10 minutes. Be prepared on that first night to not sleep.
Oh my goodness.
Honestly.
Oh my
Maybe start
goodness.
on a weekend or a day when you don't have to be to work the next day. But for
Oh my
most
goodness.
babies, you're going to be checking on them every 10 minutes for a few hours. I
Okay.
did this specific method for JJ, and we were up for a good 3 hours in the beginning of the night with me checking up on him every 10 minutes.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
and,
Okay.
it was awful. But he's a good sleeper now, but that first
Good.
night is bad.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first night. The second night, you're going to check on them after 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then every other check in's 12 minutes. The third day, the first check in is 10 minutes, and then the next is 12, and then the rest are 15 minutes. The fourth day, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, and then 17 minutes. The fifth day, 15 minutes, 17 minutes, and then 20 minutes. The sixth day, 17 minutes, 20 minutes, and then 25. And the final seventh day is 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and 30 minutes. So
And you keep
you
doing that all night long? You keep going in all night long and checking on them?
hopefully not. Hopefully not. The check-ins are for when your
Uh,
child is the check-ins are for when your child is crying or whining. If your child's
okay.
sleeping, you don't have to go in. And
Okay.
like I said, for JJ, he didn't do great for like 3 hours, but then after that he slept for hours. Um, so yeah, hopefully you're not really going in that much, but if you have to, yes.
Oh
And I
my
will
goodness.
say, if your child falls asleep after just an hour on night one, but then wakes up a few hours later and is crying, the recommendation is to go back to the beginning of those check-in times for whichever day you're on. So like on night one, you would start back over with the 3 minutes and then 5 minutes and then 10 minutes.
Okay. So what if you do the schedule and your child still never sleeps? I mean, like, this could go on forever, I think, right?
Yeah. So there is
Ah.
a full schedule of check-ins for 7 days. The recommendation is that if your child is not
Uh,
doing well after 7 days, you should just stop sleep training and readjust. Like, does your child need more time? Maybe you started at 4 months and they're not ready. So wait a month and
gotcha.
see if they're developmentally ready later.
Gotcha.
If you've done a full 7 days and we're really consistent about it and your child's still having trouble, this is a good time to talk to your pediatrician and be
Right.
like, please
Okay.
help me.
Aw.
There's a full theory on resiliency levels of children that would probably play into how well they sleep train. Another physician came up with it, and it talks about 3 levels of kids and kind of how well they cope with change. And we can talk about this another time on another episode, but basically, some kids are not as resilient as others and will not cope with change well. So, if depending on the resiliency level of your child, too, it might take longer or they might not do as well. But I will say, I talk with lots of parents all day, and most kids will be able to be sleep trained in the 7 days. Judah took 2 nights, and a
Wow.
lot of the other moms, yeah, and a lot of the other moms I talked to, their kids took 2 nights. If I had to guess, 2 nights would be average, but be prepared to do it for the full 7 days. um,
Oh,
I also have some parents who did the full 7 days without success and had to stop and do it again later. So
oh. Okay. So, I tell me a little bit more about your experience with this,
mhm,
method, and with JJ. What was it
yeah,
like for you? I mean, thank goodness
yeah.
it was only 2 days, but what exactly was it like?
Mhm. Yeah, so, like I said, the first night, it really was horrible for a while. He
Yeah.
screamed and cried. I cried. I probably didn't scream and cry, but I did cry.
Aw.
He had, like, snot in his hair. I thought I was being a bad mom. I had to, like, reach out to some of my friends to make sure, like, is this right? Like, what is going on? It was bad, emotionally hard for both of us, um,
Right.
for a few hours on the first night. And I was really glad I had friends to reach out to who had done it recently, who could be like, yes, it really is awful, but keep going because it's worth it. And honestly, I think we were up maybe half of the night the first night, and then he slept the rest of the night. And then that
Hmm.
next night, it was maybe like an hour, maybe 45 minutes of check-ins, and then he slept the rest of the night.
Okay, so
Um,
that is not that bad. That was pretty
no,
good. Yeah.
yeah, and then after that, honestly, he's been a really great sleeper after that. I mean, he has some regressions here or there, and if when he was sick one time, he didn't sleep great, but
Sure.
ultimately he's a good sleeper, and he is not actually a good sleeping baby from birth. He has not been a good sleeper, so I think for him, he's doing really well for that.
Okay, Rachel. So you mentioned there were some modified Ferber methods also. Tell us a little bit about those. What are they?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different people who have made modifications to that Ferber method. And one of those, probably the most popular, is called Taking Care of Babies. Um, Cara is Cara. It's the woman's name who made it, Taking Care of Babies. And that woman, Cara, she's had a bunch of kids. She has lots of experience, and she created that Taking Care of Babies sleep training program. It does cost money. I think it's somewhere between $100 and $300, like depending on how detailed you really want the training to be. I have not used it, but from what I've heard from patients, it works very well. Um, I've heard that it is a modified version of the Ferber method, but the information that you get really lays it all out step by step for you. And she also gives really good tips on troubleshooting when things get hard for you. I know, like some of the more expensive packages, maybe there's like more of a one on one coaching session. So I've heard really good things about it. So,
Hmm,
if you're
okay,
having trouble or if you're stressed about the process and want more information and guidance, maybe check it out. I've heard good things.
great. Okay. So, Rachel, you have successfully sleep trained one child.
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank God.
I mean, it does sound like hard work. So, what
Mhm.
advice would you give parents that are thinking about trying it with their children?
Yeah, I think the biggest key to sleep training is really consistency. Consistency, consistency.
Yeah, and that's kind of the
Yep.
same with anything in parenting, right? I
Yeah.
mean, children, they sense a weak link and
Yeah.
they slip in when they can. So if
Yeah.
you let them take an inch, they're going to steal a mile. It's
Yeah.
true for sleep training, but also for pretty much everything else, I think. If you
Mhm.
let them eat dessert before dinner one night, then they want it every night, right?
Mhm.
And if you let them get away without brushing their teeth in the morning, they're going to cry to never brush their teeth ever again. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, as
Mhm.
parents, I think we just have to stay strong and be consistent. And if you give in
Yeah.
once, it's okay, but just try to be firm and consistent after that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's going to be times where it won't be perfect. They're going to
Right.
get sick. They're going to have trouble
Right.
sleeping. You might let them sleep in the bed with you for a few nights, or you might all sleep on the
Or weeks or
couch
months or
while they're sick.
years.
Hopefully, not that long.
Hopefully not.
um,
Yeah.
or you might all sleep on the couch while they're sick, but once they're feeling better, go right back into sleep training mode and be
Right.
really firm and really consistent. For infants too, under a year, their sleep is never perfect.
Right.
They're going to go through sleep regressions, and even in Dr. Ferber's book, he calls things post-extinction bursts. Basically, they're gonna show yeah, they're gonna show behaviors that they had before sleep training. It's so important that when this happens, you really stay consistent. You might have to even go through and do sleep training again. It
Oh, no.
usually is much it's usually much easier
Okay,
the
good.
second time than the first time, but, you'll probably have to use the same techniques quite frequently. JJ, he sleeps through the night most nights, but about once a week or a couple days in a row every other week, he will wake up crying, and I'll have to use the sleep training techniques again to kind of get him to back into like his good habit of sleeping. Not like 3 hours long, but once or
Right.
twice I might have to do check-ins and tell him, "Hey, I'm still here. You're fine. Go back to sleep."
Aw. Aw.
Yeah.
So I think that no matter which sleep training method parents choose to use, or if they decide not to sleep train at all, it is exhausting and
Yeah.
stressful on parents when our children have trouble sleeping.
Right.
So reach out to family or friends for help when you need it. Talk to other parents that can relate to you, like get your own little support group, and
Yeah.
also limit stressful daily activities that add and maybe add some stress reducing activities to your schedule, like yoga, meditation, or mom, go get a massage, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Mom, you always have the best self-care advice,
I
always.
know, I know. I practice self-care regularly. I have to. Um, and like you said earlier, you said we were going to talk about sleep training for older kids,
Yeah.
like when your brother was like 5 years old and sleeping on our floor. And maybe some of you are listening and have older kids that were never really sleep trained properly and now sleep in bed with you every night. I mean, what can they do to work towards independent sleeping for those children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very similar to when they're infants. It's really all about consistency. It's just harder when they're older because they can get out of bed on their own. They don't have a crib,
Right,
or
right.
sometimes they call it a cage. They're not caged in with their crib. Um,
Right.
so
Mm,
that's why I always recommend sleep training before you move them out of the crib, because once they're in a toddler bed or a big kid bed, it is actually a
yeah,
lot harder, unfortunately.
right.
But if your kids are already out of a crib, this is what I always tell parents and what I recommend. Pick a day. Whatever day is going to be the day when they're going to transition to their own bed, their own room, and make it a big deal. Like, tell your kid, this is the day you're going to go sleep in your big kid bed. Maybe get them a new stuffed animal or a blanket, mark it on the calendar, and make it like really exciting for them. And then after that day, be very consistent. If they get out of bed and come into your room, take them right back to their room. It will probably be a long night
Oh,
or 2, like it is
probably.
for
Yep.
babies. But, like I said, pick a day when you don't have to be to work the next day, but
Right,
just
right.
really be consistent. Other parents I know have used like a sticker chart for days when they sleep the whole night in their bed. And then, they get a prize at the end of the week if they've slept in their own bed every night, the whole night. Think of something fun for them. I also have a few parents who use their sound machine light to tell their kids when they can get out of bed. So they have it programmed so that all night the light is red, and that means they have to stay in their room in their bed. And then at whatever time in the morning you want them to get up, it changes to green, and that means they can get out of bed.
Oh,
I
okay.
always thought that was a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great too. I know having a good bedtime routine also can
Mhm.
help. I mean, it helps kids know what to expect every night, right, before they go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, and this goes for little kids all the way up to teenagers, even adults. It's
Yep, it
important
works
to
for
have a
me.
Yeah, it's important to have a really consistent bedtime routine. It is helpful for kids to have a routine and lets their body kind of know when it's time for bed. So things that you can include in a bedtime routine are like taking a bath, brushing their hair or brushing their teeth, putting on their PJs. If they're little, putting on a sleep sack or in a swaddle if they're not rolling yet. Reading them a book, singing them a song, maybe drinking a bottle, getting a feed. Or breastfeeding, and then a little rocking, and then laying down in their crib. Not every day is going to do all these things, but they're just examples. But find a good routine that works well for you guys, for you and your family. Yeah.
I know also for adults, and I'm sure for kids too, it also helps to have an environment that's conducive to good sleep, and that
Yeah.
includes a few things like having the room dark, no TV on, and no lights. So for kids, I guess maybe a small night light, maybe
Yeah.
some blackout curtains if you live in Alaska when it's bright and sunny all year in
Yeah.
all day and night in the
Yeah.
summertime.
Or
But it
even if you
also
have street lights right outside their
right,
window, you shine
right,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it also includes a quiet room with no TV on, maybe a sound machine, but very quietly in the background. And you
Mhm.
also want to make sure the room is a comfortable temperature, usually between 68 and 72 degrees is what's recommended, I think, for babies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And one more thing, talking about sound machines, some babies will sleep better with a sound machine, and that's great. But others, it disturbs their sleep. So if your baby's
Huh.
having trouble sleeping and you're using a sound machine, maybe try turning it off and see if the sound machine is like waking them up. I just have some parents who found that their baby slept better when it was off.
Okay.
I also heard an ENT doctor recommend making sure, that's an ear, nose, and throat doctor, so a ear specialist. They recommend making sure that the sound machine is as far away from their little ears as possible. So, like, if their crib is in one corner of the room, put the sound machine in the far other corner. Um, and try to not have it on, but only a few hours at a time. I didn't know this until I talked to the doctor, and I had it on all night long. And he really recommends, for
Mm,
really good ear health, to only have it on for a couple hours at a time.
okay.
He said, it's bad for their ear health to have it too close to their ears, too loud, and also on for too long of a time
Wow.
period.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. So
Mhm.
we have talked about what you recommend and why, but are there any studies or medical research on sleep training? And do lots of other physicians recommend it? What's the
Yeah.
standing? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, most physicians will recommend some form of sleep training. It is really important to teach kids independence in multiple areas of life, including sleep, like we talked about. And there is no evidence that makes there is no evidence that it makes kids have issues later in life with trusting people or resilience or with mental health. I looked at one study in particular that was done in 2012. It looked at long-term outcomes of children whose parents sleep trained them, and then other children whose parents did not sleep train them. They looked at a group of 326 kids, and of those, 173 of them, so about half of those kids, were given. The parents actually were given sleep training education when the child was between 8 and 10 months of age. The other half were given no sleep training education. And all of the children were followed for 5 years, and they looked at outcomes of child mental health, child sleep, child psychosocial functioning, child stress regulation, child parent relationship, and maternal mental health and parenting
Hmm.
styles. And at the end of the study, 69% of the families ended up fully participating in both groups, the control and the sleep train group. And they found actually no difference in any of the outcomes in the sleep training group and the control group. So basically, this study shows that there is no evidence of harm to the child's mental health, to their stress regulation, or to their relationship with their parent. What is interesting to me is there was also no difference in the child's sleep after 5 years. So, what that tells me is
Hmm.
that children will end up sleeping the same with or without sleep training at 5 years and older.
So that's really interesting. So then what's the point of
Yeah.
sleep training?
I will say they do all end up sleeping well at 5 years old, but one, they don't all end
Uh,
up sleeping in their own room
yeah, you've got a point
end
there.
well by
Okay. Okay.
5.
All right. You
And
win.
also in talking to parents, sleeping through the night is a learned skill. And most kids don't learn that skill from, me talking to parents who don't sleep train. They're really not learning that skill until 2 to 5 years of age without sleep training. So, sleep training is nice to allow everyone in the house to get better sleep before the 2 to 5 year
Okay.
old age.
I can see that that would be very nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going back to the study, it was also interesting to me that there was no difference in maternal mental health, which means that even though sleep training feels at the time like it's giving you PTSD, maternal mental health is not affected by sleep training.
Yeah, that is interesting, and maybe it's because moms are getting
Yeah.
more sleep, so they're better off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's actually multiple studies done that show that sleep training yields positive sleep outcomes. Evidence shows that using behavior focused strategies like the Ferber method reliably increase children's willingness to go to bed and decrease the number of times they wake up in the night. And, these changes, they tend to stick, which is nice. In the long run, however, most children do eventually outgrow sleep issues, whether or not
Right.
they undergo sleep training. Also, currently, no research has demonstrated problematic stress responses in the short term for children who have undergone sleep training. Additionally, these children appear to experience no long term negative effects on their mental health or their relationships with their caregivers, which is really important. Really more studies need to be done in the area,
Yeah.
but it is hard. It's hard to do long-term studies
Right.
when you're studying long-term effects. It takes a long time to follow kids for years and years. But there are some that are in the works, so we'll just have to be on the lookout for those results. And if new recommendations come out from them, we'll have to look out.
Right. Right. Awesome. Well, this has been really great.
Yeah.
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 But one more thing, ultimately, you can choose what is best for your child and your family. And if you prefer not to sleep train your child, that's your decision, and that's great. And your pediatrician should stand beside you no matter what you choose. No sleep training or sleep training. No one should really judge any parent's choice on sleep training. If you sleep train your kids, don't judge moms who don't sleep train. And
Right.
yeah, right. And also take it a step further and empathize with them. It is hard when your child will not sleep through the night, or if they sleep in your bed every night. If you sleep with
Mhm.
a kid, they're kicking you and elbowing you
Right.
all night. It's not fun.
Right.
And, if you choose to not sleep train your child, don't judge the people who do. Don't tell them that their child doesn't know that they love them, all the things
Right.
that you hear.
Right.
So
So that Rachel,
do
that
what
is
you
really
want.
great. Right. Rachel, that's really great advice. I think, and I do think, yeah, we all should just have more compassion and understanding and
Yeah.
let people decide what's best for them and their families. Anyway, I
Yeah.
think that's all we have time for today. So, to all our listeners out there, I want to thank you for spending your time with us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to have a new episode out every week. So, come back next week for another topic. We do so appreciate all our listeners very much. So please tell all your family and friends to listen, give us a listen. And if you like our podcast, please give us a rating and a review. That helps other people find us. Yay.
Yeah. And also, if there is a topic you would like to hear more about, please reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram or however, text us if you know us. I'll see
Yay.
you guys next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.